You are listening to Spotlight Sessions with Justin Bamforth. The program provides an inside look at the creative field through exclusive conversations with industry professionals. Every episode is recorded live each month in the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Check out the show links to learn more and join for free, or visit adobediscord.com and click on Adobe Creative Career. This episode was previously recorded before a live listening audience. Curtis Ying is a Bay Area artist, a photographer, a graphic designer, a creative, an entrepreneur, a community builder. He is many things, but perhaps most importantly, he perseveres. And today, Curtis works as a UX designer for the Adobe Express team. But how on earth did he land that gig? Well, it involved a lot more than you may think, and I think it is a beautiful example of how we can approach careers that we want or jobs that we can only dream of. Well, Curtis is here to share with you his approach to landing that dream job and to provide insight and tips on how we can stay positive amidst an otherwise very frustrating job market and economy today. Curtis Ying, the spotlight is now on you. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And what an introduction is. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome.
All right. Well, look, let's just dive in right here. Is it true that you spent an entire year trying to land this job with Adobe?
Not true. It's 13 months, so a year and a month. But yeah, gosh, it was a journey, 13 months.
Take us through that journey. How did it first begin?
Yeah. What happened? So it was just getting laid off during the time where tech was crashing. So it wasn't that long ago, right? And unfortunately, there's still a lot of layoffs. But it was, now it's been like almost 2 years ago that I was working at a job for 2.5 years as a UX designer, and then I was laid off. And the CEO actually laid everybody off except for maybe 2 or 3 people. So I believe it was just like 1 or 2 HR and maybe like 1 IT person, just to keep the product afloat. But that was pretty wild because everyone else was laid off, right? Maybe 60 people or so, because it was a medium-sized company. And then from there, I had my sights on Adobe. But while I was working in this job for 2.5 years, I have this really awesome friend named Vicky, and she actually is still working at Adobe. And for her, it's been almost 3 years, I believe. And she's been a mentor towards me in UX design because we had worked previously at the same startup company that she got me hired at shortly after I was graduated in 2018 at San Jose State University. So she was a mentor, and she was telling me all about Adobe and how much she loved working there. So when I visited Adobe in the San Jose headquarters office, I fell in love with just the amazing environment, and then the lifestyle. The people were super kind, and just the thought of working at a company that was the very same tools I was using, every single day, right? I studied graphic design and I minored in photography and started my clothing brand in the middle of college. So just I'm so passionate about creativity and design and getting into UX and all sorts of things. So yeah, sorry, I'm just jumping everywhere, but ultimately she showed me Adobe and I absolutely loved the tour. And shortly after I was laid off, and that's when I knew that this was my chance to really fight towards getting a job at Adobe.
When you first got laid off, was there that period of mourning where you're doubting your abilities?
Yeah, it was such an interesting, what was going on in my head, because during that 2.5 years, it was such an easy job, honestly. The work-life balance was insane. The projects were very slow moving. And so it was fully remote, and I was just relaxing a lot throughout the day. So in my mind, I started to believe that this was a very transitional phase in my life. I knew that this was a really nice lifestyle. There was a lot of, when you say work-life balance, to me, it was a lot of life, and then some work balance. So that was really, really funny, just how it played out. But kind of when I continued to believe that it was a work-life balance, that's what led me to being, I think, emotionally ready if something were to happen, right? That nothing's guaranteed in this life, and losing this job wasn't going to crush me. And I knew that it might just be a transitional phase in my professional career journey.
When you were going through that 13 months, how did you make ends meet? How did you bring in a source of income?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are several factors. One of it is just having like a savings account. That's a good idea to have. So saving from like my previous jobs was great. And then saving a boatload of money because I was living with my dad. So there's that factor as well.
Did you apply to other companies at that time, or were you just set on Adobe?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it's really interesting how I approached it because I knew the job market was super terrible, especially for UX, and it's still really hard right now, as to my knowledge. So what I did was instead of worrying about every single job opening that I used to worry about before I got, my previous jobs, I started to only focus on companies that my friends were working at that I could get a referral from. And so there weren't that many, and there weren't that many that I personally was interested in. And so I simply just applied to the ones that I got referrals for. And it was in the end, after the 13 months, it was maybe about just like 10 or 11 different companies I applied for besides Adobe in 13 months.
Wow. So not many in the grand scheme of things.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable because we always hear stories of people who are applying to hundreds, if not 1,000 companies. It's tough. Myself right now, I'm looking for full-time work. I think I'm up to almost, yeah, a little over 200 now in the past few months. I've gotten one interview and one phone interview. That's it. The reason I start off with that is you had your heart set on Adobe. But what if Adobe didn't have their heart set on you? And what if they passed over you? Would you have kept applying or would you have looked elsewhere?
It's like I really wanted to give myself a shot, and I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. So I was ready to just, like take the long route, like do every single thing I could in my power to do it. Um, and just kind of going back to like the process of it too, like when people were saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, that was like really rough because I knew where they're coming from and they wanted better for me. I knew, they wanted the best for me, but I like I just really wanted to grow in like that belief that it was possible, because if I didn't believe in myself, it would be really hard for others to believe in me as well. And there's that, if you really want something, you have to truly believe it's possible. And you would, you don't want to lose that motivation. Like I personally was just, I had to really fight mentally and psychologically, kind of looking in like how I would kind of process the day to day and what I believed about myself. And it was also interesting just to think about, you know, yeah, whether it was like something that I truly wanted. Um, and it really was. I think I kept, fighting for it. But yeah, I can go like definitely deeper into like what I did to kind of get through it. But it definitely helped, I think, the mental, going into it, the mentality.
How do you look to stand out? Because Adobe it's a top company. It's like a Google. It's like an Amazon. It's virtually impossible to get a job there. The odds are against you, especially considering that you're not applying to many other places. You have your heart set on one place. Where do you begin? What do you realize you have to do to get noticed by Adobe?
Yeah, I mean that's like exactly like the question, like the answer is in part of that question, because it is like what does it take to get noticed, and it's looking beyond just the portfolio and the resume. Like my kind of like controversial thought about this whole process as designers applying for like design roles, especially UX, is to really stand out and do things outside of like the normal, obviously, right? Like to stand out is to network a lot. So things that I like highly recommend is to build connections within, the people that your immediate circle, and then people that you haven't met. Obviously, if it means going to like different events, perhaps. Adobe started doing a lot more events actually the time that I was laid off. So they had these Adobe Create Now events where they would kind of talk about their new product. The one that I went to the very first time was when Firefly was just released, their AI kind of intelligence, and how they implement it in Photoshop and in their new product, Adobe Express. So they're sharing their excitement over their new products and new launches. But after their little demo, there's like time to enjoy free food and enjoy, networking with other creators and designers out there. So that was like a really great opportunity for me to continue to network and to be motivated to be literally physically in Adobe and like to meet Adobe people. And that was something that I feel like really helped me.
I didn't know about these Adobe Create Now events. Are they just on the West Coast or are they all over the country?
They do travel around, but certainly there is more West Coast, unfortunately, for those who may not be in the West Coast. But I do know they sometimes travel to different places. So definitely keep an eye out because those are some really fun events and I think could yield some pretty good opportunities to network as well.
When you are networking, whether it's behind a computer screen or in person, what do you start off with? What's your opening line? What's your first message? What do you say?
Yeah, I think for me, I personally like to meet people in person if you can help it. So going to things. But if it had to be messages because you don't have the opportunity to meet, I think the next best thing, if it's possible as well, is to have like an in, right? So if you know a friend that knows somebody at the company that you want to work for, then maybe you would talk to this friend and then basically use their name and their credibility to kind of give you an introduction, right? It's very similar to like referrals if you're, applying for a job, right? Like, John or Justin is referring me to this company because I know Justin. And so, people are more inclined because there's more, social credibility knowing that, oh, Curtis isn't some random person that's applying. It's Curtis knows, this person and this person. There's more meaning and value for somebody to give a chance to somebody that, there is some kind of relatability or, something in common, like we know the same friend. So even when it comes to like LinkedIn, yeah, when I do messages, I would often say, oh, like, hi, I'm Curtis. And, I know, this friend here, and be able to talk about this friend if I had gotten permission from them first, that would be nice. To just give myself a little bit more credibility and introduce myself at the same time. So it is really interesting because psychologically, that person who receives my message will then think, oh, well, I do need to honor that friend because that friend is, being brought into the topic. And then I also want to honor the person who's also messaging me right now. There's a little bit more pressure, I guess you can say, for however I can explain it. It is a little hard, but hopefully that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I think it does. So, if I'm hearing you right, you really focus on building out those relationships, building out those friendships so that they can go to bat for you when the time comes, right?
Both, yeah. I think it's like getting an in because sometimes you don't have that opportunity to really build those relationships, right? It would be good to, and to, I guess, like in some ways, it is like cashing in a favor, which does kind of sound or feel kind of weird, honestly. But I guess it is necessary, right? Especially when it's harder to get a job. But it's just finding little introductions, little ways that you can get referred, or to use a friend's name to refer you to, connecting with somebody else that might be in the company that you really want to work for. So those are some nice kind of strategies, honestly.
And when you mean friend, is this somebody that you know very well or just like an acquaintance or a contact?
Yeah, that's a good question because sometimes many of them are acquaintances and it can be really awkward. I remember during that 13 months, I was thinking to myself, like, man, like this is so uncomfortable. And hopefully I feel like that's relatable for most of you. Right? It's just when you're looking for work, it's like, I have to talk to people that I don't really talk to, and I have to shake hands with strangers. And it is obviously not everyone's going to be comfortable with that. And I definitely wasn't, but I really leaned into it and to the point where I feel very comfortable to shake hands with strangers and to talk to people as if they were like friends of mine when I only met them like 5 minutes ago. So yeah, honestly, like if it encourages anybody, it is really uncomfortable, but obviously it gets better. But it is uncomfortable. Like that's just how it feels, and no one's alone in feeling that way.
Does it just become easier the more you do it, the more you practice it?
Yeah, it's kind of like being social, right? Like I grew up like an introvert, and then I had to like I found so much value in being more extroverted. I don't know if am like a full extrovert, maybe an ambivert, but it's a valuable skill. I honestly think like it is great to work on those skills of being able to keep a conversation going, right, and to be engaging. And I think like when you do talk to people, the amount of ability to like encourage somebody is great. Like if you're talking to somebody and you find reasons to, applaud someone for the amazing things they do, being able to have a voice to say that to them. And then also practically when it comes to like networking, finding a job, when you're able to keep the conversation going and to show more of your personality and your characteristics and your skills, those things are really hard to show when you're not communicating often and talking to strangers often. And so it does feel like more awkward when you're not doing it often.
You went a very different route from the typical cover letter. You did a cover letter video. What was that all about?
Yes, yes. I'm glad you mentioned. Yeah, for sure. Like when I was talking about just finding ways to differentiate yourself, and of course, there's not enough opportunities to shake everyone's hand. And companies that you decide to apply to, you don't know that company perhaps very well. So how do you kind of, in a way, find a way to be more personal towards the company that you're applying to the people that you're messaging? So I created this cover letter video. I was actually racking my brain, figuring out what is something I could create that was beyond like the cover letter and the resume. And I found like some people did like a YouTube cover letter video. And there's some guy singing with his guitar and making it rhyme. And it was really funny and it was really creative. And it was for a specific company too. It was just like crazy how much effort and time that he took into it. And so after a while contemplating what I could do, I just settled for like the video. And I think that it was still such a strong way to brand myself and put really a nice snapshot of who I am. What do I sound like? What do I look like? And then me talking about my skills, like how many experience, like 4 years in UX design was when, I made that video. And then talking about, oh, I have these hobbies. I love making coffee in the morning. I do my pour overs every single day. And then, oh, I like to, host creative meetups once a month, which I still do, which is amazing. Just like another networking opportunity for friends to get together. But I'm talking about like all these little things, right? Like about not just my work experience, but I'm showing my personality, my lifestyle, like who I am. Because what I've often heard is that people want to hire people that they can see themselves working with. And so it actually isn't about like you knowing everything about how to do the job perfectly. It's actually really proving how human you are and how relatable and whether they can imagine working with you. So that's why the video cover letter video I thought was like just a really good way to be able to send that out and to see if I get any bites for my applications.
Did you try that cover letter video technique with other companies before you did it with Adobe?
So I strategically created 2 cover letter videos, and they're both posted on YouTube as unlisted. So that way, when I send it, I can copy and paste the link and whatnot. But the first video, it said, "Hi Adobe, my name is Curtis Ying," and blah blah blah, right? And in the second video, I was the same day that I filmed it. I said, "Hi, my name is Curtis Ying." So what I did, I basically just cut, and so I made 2 different videos simply with a different intro, so that the one that I sent to Adobe was very personal, and I was hoping that it would get their attention a little bit more.
Did they talk about that cover letter video?
Yeah, so it was really interesting that I filmed this cover letter video and I was sending it out during my, kind of privately, right, when I'm applying to Adobe and when I'm applying to the other 11, 12 companies over the span of 13 months. But at a certain point, I was feeling like I wasn't getting the job soon enough. And so I decided to take the risk of posting it on LinkedIn. And looking back now, it's like, oh, it's so easy to post on LinkedIn, right? But for some people, including myself back then, it was like a little bit daunting to post on LinkedIn because it's like out there and people can see it and maybe people will judge whether it's professional or not, or what I post, is there enough value? So I took the risk because I felt like, gosh, I'm not getting this Adobe job fast enough. So I'm going to do something a little riskier and post it on LinkedIn, which actually really did create a really strong effects. I tagged some Adobe people, some Adobe employees. I tagged someone named Eric Snowden, and he He is the VP of design at Adobe, and I think he got promoted recently. So sorry if he actually ends up listening to this, but he's a little above whatever VP of design is. But he's pretty up there, like very up there, right? So I tagged him, posted the video, and then a lot of people liked it. And then he commented, which was really cool. Like I didn't think he would comment on it, but he basically was like, "Oh, Curtis, this is awesome. Let me know what I can do. Let's like have a chat."
Whoa.
Yeah. So it was really cool. I got his attention, which was just super wild. I was so thankful. I messaged him. We found time to meet. And it was supposed to be at the Figma conference. There was a Figma conference last year. I know we had one recently. But the Figma conference was happening. I was going to be there. So we were actually going to meet each other in the morning of like day 2 of the Figma conference because he was actually going to be there. But the night before that morning, unfortunately, his executive assistant emailed me and said that he was like unavailable. He had to go to the office actually. And so that was a bummer because I was getting ready. I got like a good outfit perhaps to wear and to be able to shake his hand and talk to him in person because again, right, it's the personality. It's being like very personable and be relatable. And yeah, it just builds a stronger connection when you meet people in person. So unfortunately I couldn't meet him, but we rescheduled into a video call. So that was the next best thing. But we had this video call and it was so cool. I think like I went and I put on my my best webcam. I put a nice little background. I put some fake trees in the background, like fake plants and whatnot. So it was like it's like this whole like YouTube looking setup or something like that. And then we had this call and it was he was so easy to talk to. So I was amazed how fun it was. And one of the first things he said was that he respected me for doing something like that, so different, to stand out. And he said, like, contrary to popular belief, a lot of people don't apply to Adobe with something like a video cover letter. And so I was really encouraged that day to hear that he really respected me, given, him being such a high up VP of design at Adobe, to tell me, four-year, UX designer isn't like super, super, super established, right? To, have that affirmation. So that was really encouraging. And then after that call, I thought, oh gosh, that's it. I got my job. He's telling me to wait for the 4 new openings for design, and they came, and boom, it was like a senior position, there was a staff position, and I was looking at these job descriptions. I was like, oh my gosh, like wait, I'm not qualified for these roles. I don't know the impression he has of me. I am not there. I am like a mid-level designer. So I tell him which ones I applied to. He's like, awesome, I'm going to send it over. And then like 4 days later, I get rejection notices on all of them. So that was really discouraging. I was like, crap, I thought this was it. I thought I was going to get the job for sure. I had such a strong connection with this VP of design, Eric Snowden, but did not work out. And the journey turned out to be much longer than I thought. But people say, a good manager allows others to lead. So I don't think he pulled any strings. Personally, in my heart, to be very honest, I was hoping he'll pull some strings, obviously. I think anyone would. But no, he did not pull any strings for me. So I had to continue to wait for the right job opening to come out.
It wasn't just you applied to one Adobe job. You applied to several. And as I'm looking at your timeline of events, you applied to Adobe a total of 14 times.
Yes, that's right. 13 or 14 years.
Yeah, 14 total. You were rejected 13 times. But on the 14th attempt, you got through. And I think that's significant because, I've heard this from time to time from other job seekers is be careful how many times you're applying to the same company. But you are living proof that it doesn't matter. It shows tenacity. You really wanted this job or a job working with Adobe here. And as I'm looking at your timeline here, connecting with Eric Snowden, that was towards the beginning of all this. After that, you were rejected 3 more times, and then you connected with some people. You were rejected 3 more times after that. You connected with some more people. But the theme that I'm seeing looking at your timeline here is you didn't stop. You just kept connecting with one person, another person, another person. You had more calls with other people. You talked with Vicky a lot.
Yeah.
What was her advice at this time?
Oh, yeah, 100%, like, just not giving up. But what did she say? Yeah, Vicky, she was telling me about the ins and outs of the company. She was really helpful in telling me what to expect, or, oh, are there any new roles coming out? Um, I think a lot of it was just encouragements. Maybe she'll take a look at my portfolio once in a while to tell me if there's some things. She told me about volunteer opportunities at Adobe, which is how I got into Adobe Max for 2023, which was amazing because it's pretty darn hard actually to get the Adobe Max, unless you pay $1,700, right? But ugh, that's a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I don't know why it's so expensive. Um, but yeah, I talked to her a lot. I think you mentioned about applying to one company too many times, and that's super interesting because I didn't find that the case to be a hindrance to Adobe. I think there are companies that look, don't let you. They might even have a cooldown, which is really weird to me that you can't apply after applying. Like you have to wait like 3 months or something like that for other 10 companies, and yeah, it is a little bizarre. For me, yeah, there was no cap, so I just kept applying, even to the jobs I wasn't qualified for. Like there was like some seniors and some staff. Staff is like about 7 years of experience, so it's a lot, and I wasn't there. And later do I find out that yeah, like they take the years very seriously for Adobe. So yeah, like I applied to them but was rejected pretty quickly from them anyways. But that's what happened as well. But it didn't hurt to continue to apply. Like I kept applying. It was 13 times, pretty crazy. 14 times total.
I know when we connected, you said that you were feeling less confident and you were tired.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
Yeah, definitely.
Being rejected over and over and over. How do you keep a positive mindset? How do you know that you're on the right path?
Oh, yes. Yeah, and that was so great. Like guys, like you guys gotta connect with Justin sometime if you guys haven't already. But there were some pretty discouraging moments, especially nearing the 13 months, maybe like at the 10th month mark or so, because I started to think, oh, maybe I won't actually be considered ever for the job, right? I was doing everything like volunteering and networking, right, with so many different people at Adobe physically and also online. So yeah, I think what had happened that helped a lot during those 13 months, that didn't feel like 13 months because what I kept telling myself was to live in the future. And so what I mean by that is, and like, imagine if you had a job for sure. It was like a certainty. Like there's no doubt in the world that you're going to have a job. And then you look back at the time that you were worried and anxious about getting a job and how you would feel about that, looking at your past self. And for me, I thought, I don't want to live with that kind of regret. Like, let me see if I can do things productively while looking for a job. How can I not be worried or anxious about these things? So, what I did and what helped so much, first of all, was yeah, having like a hobby, right? Like for myself, I had a clothing brand. I continued to work on this clothing brand as a side business called Exilo Studio. So I did a Kickstarter and that went well and it was successful. I went and I did volunteer work with Adobe. So that was productive in multiple ways, right? Because there were ways to network and to get more visibility with the company, but to also do something and not, stay at home and sleep in every single day, because that's very easy to do, unfortunately. Um, I went to, what else did I do? I did a Kickstarter. I kept working on my clothing brand. Oh, and then just pouring into the community, the creative community. So I started to get so passionate and I had so much more time to work on something I call Exilo Creative Meetups, which is just a branch of my clothing brand Exilo, and meeting with my friends and newcomers to see them once a month. And it was just providing a space and a safe space for people to come. So it would literally just be, this month, September 15th, we're going to be meeting at this coffee shop. So, come through, it'll be from 11 to 3. And so literally it's like a mixed bag, right? It's just random people might come, and it's always nice to see the reoccurring guests come, my friends coming as well. But everybody is going there and they're just passionate about creativity, some sort of design, some sort of hobby. And we attract a lot of entrepreneurs too, those who have their own little side businesses and side hobbies. So that was great to just be able to give back to the community and have a mission beyond just getting a job. I think there's definitely, it really helps to be distracted or to do things outside of just, focusing on getting a job.
I know that you're Christian and I'm Christian. And the reason I bring that up is because there is a mindset with that community. While you're waiting on your blessing, be a blessing to others. And when I look at the volunteer work that you're doing, the community that you're building, you're doing just that. You're creating an opportunity, a networking event, a networking experience to help others. And it keeps your mind in a positive direction, right? Um how important is faith to you when you're a creative?
Mm, yeah, man, that's a big question. And I love that you brought that up because, yeah, my faith is huge in my whole identity in my life. I personally believe that I was created, like that the world was created by God and I was created, and everybody's created with imagination and ability to create and be creative. And I think is lovely when we think about ourselves, a lot of ourselves probably in this Discord, that we're more like creatively inclined, right? We step more into it. We feel more gifted into our creative hobbies and jobs. And so, yeah, when I think about my faith, which is why I talked about living in the future, because I really believe that God would provide a job for me, whether it's at Adobe or not. And so when I had that strong belief in God to provide me a job, I could relax a little bit and focus on doing things that I was also passionate about outside of the job search, outside of getting a full-time job. And that really helped. I think it gave me that confidence and the mental dexterity, to not worry as much as somebody else might without the faith.
And the other reason I bring that up, bringing it full circle, don't worry, audience, is because that faith plays a integral role into the name that you chose for your clothing company.
Yeah, good memory, Justin. The brand name Exhilo Studio, right? It's actually a made-up word. I think the term is actually portmanteau, because it's words mashed together. So Exhilo, there is a Latin phrase. It's an old Latin phrase, and it is creatio ex nihilo, and that means creation from nothing. And that phrase is often used philosophically to describe how God created everything from nothing. And so in the book of the Bible, it talks about he spoke the world into existence, basically highlighting the ability and the power to be able to create without pre-existent matter. And it's crazy and mind-blowing to think about that kind of power. Because for us, if we think about it, we need lead in our pencils. We even need the pencil and the wood to create the pencil. We need concrete and to make bricks, to make buildings. So none of this stuff is actually us creating from nothing. It's creating with something that was created already. And so I really like kind of diving deeper into these like theological topics and diving into kind of the magnificence of an all-powerful being, which is to me is God of the Bible. So that's always been fascinating to me and allows me to really see more meaning in my creativity, in my life as a creator.
Yeah, and look, it just speaks to what type of creative that you are too. Because sure, we can make things look pretty all day. We can make things look visually appealing. But to have that, to go deeper, to go further, to have that other meaning, that takes skill, you know? So that's pretty amazing stuff. And that's why I like talking with you. I could see that from day one when I was looking at your work. I was like, okay,
Oh
guy,
wow,
this
thank
guy
you.
gets it. He's got something behind all of these designs and these creations. But you were formerly trained in graphic design. That was your major in college, right?
Right, it was.
But how did you make the transition from graphic design to UX design?
Right. Yeah. So a lot of people ask that question, and it's a great question. And it's funny how sometimes it's so simple. And I forgot to also make a disclaimer, just like everything I'm saying, literally everything, um, it comes from my perspective, right? It's like my life. And sometimes I find that people impose certain rules, or they say, oh, this is how you get a job for sure. You must network, you must do X, Y, and Z. And unfortunately, that's not always the case, right? And some people, they fall into this trap of believing, someone has a strong opinion, like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. But it could be totally different. Everyone has a different story. So I love sharing my story because I just hope that it could apply to everybody who listens. But at the same time, right, there is a taking of a grain of salt where you might be able to find a pathway that you get this, job that you really are seeking, and might not be doing half the things I was doing. So I wanted to preface that a little bit.
There you go. This is not legal advice.
Yeah, maybe I should have said that. There we go. Not legal advice. But going back to your question, right? For graphic design, so this is where my buddy Vicky comes back into the picture again. But after graduating, 3 months after, Vicky, messages me, which is really funny because I don't think she knew that I graduated recently. So here she is messaging me, asking me, oh, do you know any other designers that would be interested in joining the startup company I'm working at? And so it took me a second to think, gosh, like actually me, right? Like, why didn't you ask me? I'm free to get this job. So I tell her, and she's like, oh, great, wonderful. So I go in and I get the interview, and it was a very simple interview process because it was a startup. So some startups, I guess, like it really depends. This one just had like one interview, and they gave me the offer in the same room. So that was cool. I said, okay. And so I joined that company, and that's where I learned UX design. So I was interested. I did like an internship, actually, UX design during college. I always forget about that experience. So that I did do that, redesign some kind of a website, but it was very bare bones, right? I didn't have that many fundamentals in my mind when I was doing it. So joining this startup company was really great because, as most people talk about startup companies, you wear a lot of hats, right? So I wasn't just going in with my graphic design and photography skills, but I was also doing, well, I guess I was doing emails and whatnot, but print collaterals, but then I was also doing UX design. So back then, Figma wasn't big. I don't even know if it was still alive or was born during that time, but Sketch was the thing. So Sketch was, a way to create, the UI designs. Some people might know, for sure. But yeah, I learned how to use Sketch, and Vicky was the lead designer. So she was also giving me guidance as to how to do things and, learn UX. So that was wonderful because after this startup company, I could very easily put that on my resume, right? That was my year. I think it was about a year that I was there until COVID happened, unfortunately. Then I was laid off. But it was a solid year of working at that startup company where I could claim now to the world that I have 1 year of UX experience outside of college, outside of internships.
Beyond doing UX at Adobe right now, you do a lot of other things for Adobe. Like you mentioned before the start of this interview, you were doing an Adobe Live. What else do you do for them?
Yeah, that Adobe Live was great today. It was super tiring too, but it was great. Yeah, I had to wake up super early. And what else do I do for Adobe? That's a good question. It was very, like, I did so much, I believe, leading up to getting the job, and now I get to relax a little bit, which is nice. And Adobe Live was definitely a volunteer effort. It was nice because it was a contract role too. So since I am contracting at Adobe right now, I can get paid for doing Adobe Lives. So hopefully, the hope is I will be converted to full time and be like a full time employee. But yeah, during this time, as they work on 1 year before conversion is what they say. I'm a contractor, so they treat contractors really well. So I'm really glad to be here, and I don't feel like I'm missing out. But yeah, at the same time, I can do things like Adobe Live, right? So what else I think I did before I spoke at a panel? So there was this awesome Adobe Creative Retreat, which is like, yeah, it was really cool. It's like a 2-day event, and they invited a lot of people who were graduating from college. So these were about like junior or seniors in college. These people were invited that were also in the creative field, studying creative roles, to go to this event. And I was, given the volunteer opportunity to speak as a panelist in the panelist event. So I talked about my freelance, my contract gigs, and also my clothing brand Xhilo and my experiences in UX. And it was really funny because that was before I got the job at Adobe. So I was still really, really fighting to get a job at Adobe, right? So in my mind, I'm talking about my experiences, but I'm also thinking at the same time, gosh, I really want to work here, but I can't tell them, because I'm supposed to be talking about like the gigs I have now and my experience I have now and in the past. So it was definitely like a struggle to be able to like talk about just those things and not like this crazy massive effort of trying to get a job at Adobe. And I do see Ola Adams asking actually like how I got volunteer opportunities, which is kind of a perfect segue, I guess, about yeah, like how I got these volunteer opportunities. Like first of all, like networking with people at Adobe, like I was super lucky, right, to have met Vicky beforehand because she told me about, the volunteer stuff that was going on. And then going to these Adobe Create Now events that were happening, like I found out through social media that Adobe was doing these events and it was in San Francisco. Going there and then networking and talking to people also yielded opportunities to then learn about these volunteer kind of events that were happening. They're like, oh, Curtis, after I shook hands with them, talked to them for a little bit, they learned about my background. They thought maybe you would be great to speak at as a panelist or something like that. So I think it is definitely talking to people at Adobe, whether you can find people on LinkedIn and talk to them, whether you can use my name perhaps, right? Since you are listening to this call, which is awesome. We can connect on LinkedIn and then you can, be like, hey, I was listening, to this Discord call and then, reach out to whoever you wanted to reach out to on Adobe with like that to say that, Curtis. So that could be helpful. But kind of painting that scenario, right, of how you might be able to learn about volunteer opportunities in that way.
Before you were doing all of this public speaking, that wasn't your preferred thing, right? How did because you mentioned it, right? You're an introvert, maybe you're an ambivert now, like who knows? But how did you overcome your fears and learn to become comfortable on stage or in front of a camera or behind a microphone doing an interview that millions are listening to right now? How did you get over that?
How did I get over it? Yeah, like I think it was crazy. Like in community college, that's where I went to before I transferred to a 4-year, university, San Jose State University college. That community college was really great. Taught me all these awesome Adobe, tricks and tips and how to use it. But I took this. It was a public speaking class, and it was just one of those required classes that you had to take, right? People go in and they're just like, oh, I just need to get this over with because they're not like exactly interested in these kind of classes. They're just, you have to take it. But this teacher, gosh, he was like the hardest teacher ever for public speaking. So you would see people dropping out of his class, which was really wild. But thankfully, I was able to kind of stick through it to the very end because he grilled us really badly and he had super high expectations. So my first speech, I was reading off the paper and I was super nervous and he gave me a C for that because I was, it wasn't good. Like I was just reading and I was really stiff. I wasn't moving around. I was barely doing any eye contact. And during that time, I was very, very nervous about, public speaking. But I was so challenged by that C grade and I really wanted to do better that I started to push myself out of my comfort zone. And like, that's how I got better at public speaking. I did this one presentation about social media. And instead of like line for line, word for word, I created an outline instead of what I was going to talk about. And so it forced me to improvise because there wasn't like a bunch of like summaries about what I was talking about. It was literally just like a line and then a bullet, like, a bullet, another bullet, things I wanted to talk about. So I did that and it was like incredibly different. Like I was pacing, walking around, making eye contact with people, moving my hands around because I wasn't relying on a piece of paper anymore. I was just looking at the paper once in a while to see what point I need to talk about next. And that helped a lot. So that's like how I got out of that. And then really just the practice, like I started to enjoy it a lot because I started to realize that people want to be in your corner when they listen to you public speaking. It's actually really uncomfortable when you see the speaker become nervous and they start to stutter and like they don't know what they're doing and their hands are fidgeting, and they're obviously very uncomfortable and very like anxious and worried about what they look like. And I find myself really like you know empathizing with that person, right? Like, oh gosh, I really want to see them build that confidence. Hopefully they can finish what they're trying to say, because they look like they're going to throw up or something. So I realized the audience wants you to succeed. And I think with that belief, it made me more appreciate and enjoy public speaking, because I didn't feel like I had any enemies. I felt like people just definitely just wanted you to succeed, because it was just uncomfortable to watch someone be uncomfortable too, right? So that's why people want you to do well in your public speaking. At least that's my point of view, and I hopefully that makes sense.
To learn more about tonight's guest, Curtis Ying, you can check out his website, curtisying.com, or visit his clothing brand at xhelos.studio. And these links have been posted in the chat so you can easily find them. Or to those of you listening on demand, it will be in the episode notes. And if we don't get a chance to cover your questions, feel free to reach out to Curtis directly on Discord following the show. He is active on this server, and he's part of the Adobe Community Experts program, which has their digital footprint all over the place in every server. But I want to move on, Curtis, to creating portfolio websites, because I know that you take a quote unquote controversial approach to this. How many pieces should one have?
I see. I see. We're going to these questions. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because my controversial thought is that reach the bare minimum with your portfolio and then maximize on your networking and building your personality and humanizing yourself in the process of being considered for the job. And I can get more into that, hopefully. But pieces, people say don't add like a bunch of portfolio pieces, especially with work that you don't want to be working and doing at the job that you're applying for. And so if you're looking for a UX job, for example, right? Maybe you shouldn't post your graphic design poster projects, because that's not telling the people who are looking at your portfolio that you want to do UX design. They're seeing irrelevant kind of work. Like, you might be super proud of that graphic design project. So it is pretty tough to be able to sift that out. But you want to be showing the work that's relevant, obviously, to the field that you are most interested and concentrated in applying for. So that's one thing. And then for me, I think my personal belief is that 2 to 3 case studies is more than enough. I think honestly, right, the people who are looking at your portfolio spending 3-4 minutes or less is going to look at the first case study most likely. If you're lucky, maybe the second one. But they're not going to look at more than that, I believe. Yeah, it's just kind of unfortunate that you put so much time into it, and so little time and effort is actually put into looking at your portfolio. So that's why my controversial opinion is like, don't fret about every little thing about a portfolio because of how little time is actually put into it. Reach that minimum where you see the expected behavior. Like, the person who's looking to hire you and looking at your portfolio doesn't see something that's like completely like wrong or looks completely different than everyone else's. I think that would definitely help to reach that bare minimum, because at the same time, like, what I did was like a video cover letter, right? For example. So those were ways that really helped. And totally forgot to mention, but the manager who hired me for this Adobe job did absolutely love my video cover letter. And that was really affirming to know that, oh, it worked. That video cover letter was worth the investment in time, editing it, using Premiere Pro and spending hours to record and make a script. So yeah, that's like my personal story. Again, personal success story. This is not your legal advice.
No, I think that's really inspiring. And because I know that Mickey had posted a question here about how do you know if your resume and portfolio are good and presentable enough? And I think you kind of touched on that. But like, how do you know when you're in a good spot and you can send it out?
Yeah, it's so funny because it could be kind of subjective, I guess. But you could look around and find some pretty cool portfolios. It's really funny because I don't even love my portfolio. I think I asked 90% of the designers out there, they don't love their portfolio. It's not just me. But I don't think some of the UX portfolio, like case studies I have, are that strong, honestly. So I'm really I think that's what led me to really conclude that it's not the most important thing to have like the strongest pieces. I think it is really like your personalization and like connecting with people. Because yeah, the websites, they still don't, they have a layer of separation still, even if you put like a nice photo of yourself and try to highlight some of your favorite hobbies and whatnot. Nothing really beats like just them messaging you, or you knowing somebody they know, or knowing people at the company already that you're applying for. So yeah, I think to answer that question of, is it like how developed the pieces have to be, it helps to definitely like compare. Like, I'm super hesitant to say this obviously, but you can definitely look at my portfolio since it has been accepted by Adobe, and kind of take a look at maybe the structure or like the amount of content, that can help.
Yeah, no, it's good to know. And speaking about the hiring managers looking at your portfolio, I was on an interview recently where they told me, "Oh, I haven't looked at your portfolio."
Oh,
I,
oh my
yeah,
gosh.
they just interviewed me because they were impressed with my work experience and because they wanted to hire someone from the corporate sector. So they didn't even look at my portfolio, and it was a
Oh my
creative
gosh.
job, right? So you never know where they're coming from. So don't stress over all of those things that you just can't control because, like you said, sometimes just having that network contact is going to be your in. You never know. In the case of Curtis here, could it have been the video cover letter was what really got him in through the door? You know, who knows? Okay, so this is a question from Elizabeth here, going back to the portfolio stuff. Could a portfolio with a single case study be a successful one if the main focus is on networking?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a great example, right, Justin? You said that no, they didn't look at your portfolio. And then for me, they looked at it like maybe 2, 3 minutes, but saw the video cover letter first, which is what really got their attention in the first place. So it's like, I would never recommend just one. Honestly, like if I could choose, I would recommend more than one, like two, maybe the most minimum. I think because it shows that, you know, that you aren't like just straight out from a boot camp, for example, like you have done two different things, because case studies take a long time, honestly. So sorry, that it's so much work, and I understand it for those in UX. But yeah, just having two at least, I think, is important in case they do actually look at your portfolio. Imagine if they didn't, right? Like,
Yeah,
like for your case, Justin. So, and it happens, right? Yes.
that was an anomaly, not the norm.
Yeah. But I think it's real. Like sometimes they just glaze over it. Maybe they don't even notice that you have three, and they just look at one and they don't care that you have only one, right? For Elizabeth's question. So I think it's just safer to have two, I guess, two plus. But three is like strong enough. It would be really weird to have like so many case studies. I think it shows like you're able to curate your work as well.
This is another one that comes from Mickey here, because this also captures, I guess, what we deal with too. Is what if you're interested and passionate in multiple types of work? How do you organize that? How do you structure that?
I see, for the portfolio specifically, right?
Yeah.
Um. Oh well, yeah. If you look at my portfolio actually, and you go under like the creative works, you'll see UX design, photography, logo design, and graphic design. But because I was focused on getting a UX design, the UX case studies were in the homepage. And I think they were like the more clickable work. It was like the first drop down. It was UX design. And so I think yeah, I still struggled with that. Um, just being able to, what do I show? Like I want to show more than just my UX case studies. I feel like there's more about me that I want to share to the world. So that was kind of my compromise. And I don't know if that's actually the best decision, because it does take away from the central focus of UX. Thankful that they saw the UX part of it. Um, but yeah, it's figuring out a balance. Because if you scroll down my homepage, you'll also see, run my fashion brand, and at the very bottom it says take photos with my camera. And so I tried to tell a short little narrative where I am still saying UX first, but I'm also talking about creative meetups. I'm talking about running my fashion brand. I'm also talking about taking photos with my camera, just in case they actually spend an extra minute to find out that I do other things besides UX. But you can't really base your hope in that they would really take an in-depth study about your portfolio. So how can you communicate basically what you want or who you are and how you're good for the role that you're applying for as fast as possible?
Is it safe to say that you should treat your website kind of like a billboard? You only have a few seconds to capture their attention.
I think it is kind of like a billboard. Yeah, that's such an interesting analogy. But yeah, like when they have like three. So my manager was saying she had like 400. I forgot what it was. Probably 300 applications to sift through. Like in maybe a week, it's like, oh, you don't want to spend that much time honestly on one because you're worried about 299 more, right? And then 298, and that's just crazy. So why would you spend like more than several minutes, right, on someone's portfolio? So it is like, how do they get the essence of you, or understand if you actually do UX, right? It's to show UX sooner than later, not showing maybe your graphic design work or photography if you're applying for UX. So you see the UX sooner, that's obviously great because now you're communicating that you are the right person. At least you're relevant to what you're applying for.
Again, I'd like to thank my guest, Curtis Ying, for joining us to discuss his incredible career journey. Be sure you connect with him on Discord, on LinkedIn, or over at his website, curtisying.com, or support him and pick up some cool duds at his clothing company, xhelo.studio. If you enjoyed this program, catch all the latest updates for the next Spotlight sessions and all the great content here in the Adobe Creative Career Discord by following the upcoming events at the top of the server. You can see what's coming next. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen to me, your host, Justin Bamforth, aka JBam. You can always find me on Discord, LinkedIn, or over on my website, justinbamforth.com. Until next time, everyone, take care.
Yay. Thanks, JBam. Thanks, everyone.
For more conversations with creative professionals, subscribe to the Spotlight Sessions podcast or check out the Adobe Creative Career Discord. Links are posted in the show notes, or visit adobediscord.com and click on Adobe Creative Career.